Okay, we should be live now. Let me see. Oh, it looks like it's. I think it's live.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, it's up. Okay.
All right.
There. All right, very good. Well, right now we've only got like 5 people coming in already. Okay. So hello everyone. This is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. I am freezing my ass off. This is the coldest winter that I've seen in Uruguay in 20 years. It's basically we're just getting all of our weather direct from Antarctica. Yeah. But that's okay, I guess. We're gonna wait as usual. We're gonna wait a little while here while we get more people coming in, because usually we get a lot of stragglers here for the first 10 minutes or so, and then after that we will begin the interview, begin the show.
So you're dealing with a cold winter. You're dealing with a cold winter, but I'm dealing with an extremely hot summer. South Carolina.
Yeah, well, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot of parts of North America have got heat waves going on. Yeah,
that's wild. Doing all I can to keep the inside of buildings under 78 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, where did that go now? I'm missing. Jeez. Okay. Had to adjust my heater manually like some kind of caveman. I've lost the remote control for it. It was here a moment ago. All right. Anyway, hello everyone who's coming in. Hi there, Matthew Sinance, Deum Servio, Ryan Nilsson. Good to see you guys. I think we're going to have a very interesting show tonight. Still can't find my... Oh, there it is. Must have been the cat. She must have knocked it down there. Okay, found it now. That's it. Crisis averted. Yeah, speaking of my cat, you guys, those of you who are familiar with Domino know that she's got some unique qualities all of her own compared to my previous cats. My other cats had no reaction ever to screens, right? Like whatever was on the television, right? It just didn't exist for them, you know. And that was the norm for both of them. But Domino has been different. Right from the beginning, she saw what was going on in screens, and she's interested in it. And I've discovered that there are some things that draw her more than others, which is sometimes very weird stuff, right? Because I've realized now, like, and it's happened like 3 times now, so I know that this is real. This isn't just a one-time fluke chance or something like that. Whenever Bill Maher is on a screen of mine, she goes kind of nuts, right? And specifically, I guess I'd never noticed it until now, right? But Bill Maher, when he talks, he does a lot of little movements with his hands, right? And usually the way when they're filming him, his hands are right at the bottom edge of the screen. And she looks at it, she goes crazy, right? She starts pawing at the hands of Bill Maher, you know? It's like, what the hell? You know, I don't know if she's a fan or if she's just like deeply disturbed by him, which of the two, but she just, she thinks it's a game or something, I think.
They make videos just for cats too, all over YouTube. I know. Floating around.
I've played some of those, and some of them she's drawn by, and a lot of others she's not. So it's like weird the things that she gets to noticing. It's unpredictable.
I have a cat that watches movies with us, so every time we play like one of the old movies, he'll just sit there and stare at it the entire time. The other ones could care less.
Well, I'm going to start getting a pipe ready. Oh, how do you know the Esnite? Hello. Good to see all of you guys as you come in here. We're up to 18 people already. That's not too bad. We'll give it a little bit more time just because otherwise there's always people that show up and they're like, oh, what did I miss, right? And that's a legitimate question if you've come in 10 minutes late or whatever. But if
10 minutes after I give the secret to living a happy life. And
once in a while, though, you get people who are like, we're almost 2 hours in and they're like, hey, what happened? What did I miss? Like, okay, after we watch the video, dude. That's why you can watch them after the live stream too. You know, you don't have to be here. Let's clean a couple of pipes here while we're waiting.
I wonder how many of my players are going to try messing with me in the chat tonight. So, because I've got a couple of them that have said they're going to tune in.
Well, that's good. I guess they'll keep you honest about anything you're doing in your campaign. So.
Oh yeah, Matt. When you see the comment pop up, Matthew's a liar. Don't listen to him. He's evil.
Another thing about Domino is she likes to lurk. So I've got it next to my desk here. I have a little coffee table, and once in a while, like just now, I look over here and I just see a pair of eyes from like just below the coffee table staring up at me.
Oh man.
She wants to watch me from a safe distance, I guess.
If mine were in here right now, I couldn't keep them off the desk. So I like to be as high as possible.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're starting up a YouTube channel, I have to say that my cats randomly showing up in YouTube videos has often been a big draw. So
I guess I'll have to bring some of them into them, but they would get missing in this mess of a shed right now. I'd find them hiding behind boxes of Barrows and Borderlands.
Do you know it's very cold here? It's been close to freezing for several nights. Some people have actually died from it because Uruguayans are not used to the cold, right? I'm Albertan originally, so for me 0 degrees is like springtime in Vancouver, so it's not a big deal, but. It always feels like more of a big deal inside, though, because of course in Canada every house is intensely intensely insulated, so you don't necessarily feel it as cold when you're indoors as when you're outdoors in Canada. But here, this is a 100-year-old house. Almost all older houses in Uruguay have zero. They don't have heating, right? Like you have to have heaters, and they have no real insulation to speak of whatsoever, right? Like it's completely exposed because most of the time you don't need it in this country,
right?
So it's completely sensible, and it is brick, not wood, but it's still like all the windows let in the cold, and I also have a skylight, so that lets in the cold.
Yeah, we live in an RV, and our RV's insulation only goes so far, and you'll know it's getting really bad heat waves whenever the walls start to, especially it's mainly the humidity, but the walls will start to sweat. But you would have thought the world was ending when it just snowed this past winter here. It's like the first time in a couple years. Everybody was freaking out.
Where are you? What state are you in?
South Carolina, on the coast, so Charleston area.
Yeah, that's not going to be a very cold winter state, is it?
No, not at all. Yeah, cold here is like, oh man, it's 40. So, and then it just stays between 70 and 100 for the rest of the year till August when it jumps up to like 110.
All right, so we got 22 people watching here. We're going to start in just a little bit, guys. A lot of people end up being stragglers. They only spot this place that we're live, and after a bit. So if you want to help out, put a post somewhere, link the live stream, get people joining. If you feel like it, you know, I'd like that. I'd appreciate it. Hello, Death Angel Shadow. Nice to see you. As usual, this is going to be an interview format. Those of you who are in the chat can feel free to ask questions and make comments and what have you. And unlike some of the other channels, like, you know, Double D and stuff like that, who usually only put up or respond to super chats. It's not fair. Double D sometimes responds to people who don't super chat, but usually it's people that he knows really well. but anyway, I was just using him as an example, right? But in my channels, I'll put up anything that I find interesting personally, and so you don't really have to do a super chat to end up getting your comment noticed. Of course, I do welcome people doing super chats. Any super chat money will be going to Domino's Cat Toy Fund, probably, or maybe to fund her upcoming spaying. Don't tell her, guys. And she's almost at that age that she's got to get spayed. So,
my friend Mark,
be responsible, you know.
My friend Mark wanted me to tell you you've got a nice scarf on today. So, got a couple of people tuning in.
I do like the scarves. Yeah, I'm being a bit of like Bob Barker here, right? Don't forget to spay and neuter your animals. And just feel, like I said, feel free to for the super chats will go to, let's say, Domino's general welfare, including her neutering, or spaying rather. All right, so it is now 9:12. We'll give it 3 more minutes, and then we're going to start. Okay, that'll be just enough time for me to pack my next pipe before we begin. Oh, that's an interesting question. Okay, I guess I can talk about this while I'm lighting my pipe. What's your take on the large silence out of WotC? Okay, listen. WotC, as you know, Crawford and Perkins left a while ago. The guy they had doing all of their kind of social media stuff was fired. And Jess Lanzillo, who was the current boss of D&D, quit. And both of those 2 people had only been there for a few months, right? So I think it's really clear at this point. I had some people, some guys, especially some bozos on the RPG site, who are saying, "Well, Pundit, you're just making things up." When I predicted this last year, right? Like I predicted this in autumn, northern hemisphere autumn last year, that if the VTT failed, they were going to shutter Dungeons and Dragons, and that's very clearly what's happening, right? Like pretty much all the creators are getting fired. Everybody's getting fired. They're going to finish some of the products that they had already said they were going to make, and then they're going to just like shut it down. You know, they're going to shut it down. Maybe they'll license it, but they'd have to get a really good licensing deal from someone. And if they're not doing that, then what they're going to do is they're just going to shut it down for 5 years or something like that. And then maybe they'll try to do a revival, which is something that they do with a lot of WotC's products. Some people are saying, well, they might sell it, but Hasbro never sells anything. Okay, all of the products that they have, all the franchises they have, they will sometimes license, but they'll never sell because they're a gigantic multinational corporation, and they figure if maybe in 10 years they can do a revival of something, right? I don't know, G.I. Joe, right? They can revive G.I. Joe again, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it won't. And if it doesn't, they'll just shut it down for another 10 years and then try again, right? The thing is, when you're one of the largest companies in the world, you have the ability to do that. So again, they might license if they get a really good deal from someone, a real good offer. But if not, they'll just shutter it. Now, the thing that they might not be considering is that unlike G.I. Joe, for example, Dungeons and Dragons has a whole bunch of third-party product, and it can perfectly keep going without having an official Dungeons and Dragons. The OSR is more successful now than it has ever been before. For the last 5 years, it's becoming more and more successful. There's a lot of products that can become more important. Now, of course, nothing would replace D&D. Like there would be no center pin anymore. But that won't stop the possibility for people to keep playing D&D games. And the hobby might not become, like, it might lose a large chunk of the hobby that started with 5th edition, but some of them will stay. There'll be third party clones of 5th edition probably, and there will also be the OSR, and of course there'll also be all the other RPGs, right? So the difference there is that Wizards will have trouble being able, like Hasbro will have trouble being able to revive something that doesn't ever really go away, right? So they'll probably have to wait to see an opportunity where possibly some other RPG becomes particularly popular for some reason, or something like that, or some RPG related media or something, and then they'll try to hitch on to that bandwagon. So who knows? So that's basically my prediction on this question, Adino. I think that they are shutting down production. I was going to say gradually, but it's not very gradual. Like they're either firing everyone or those people are quitting. So it's happening pretty fast.
I can see them.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I could see them licensing just the brand name and becoming more of a, if you want to use our name, pay us this. Time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they might keep some of that for themselves. Like they might still try to sell D&D merch, like nostalgia stuff and toys and whatever. That's entirely possible. They might do a one-time, like, oh, this is a reprint of the Moldvay box set or something like that when its anniversary or whatever. I don't know, something along those lines, right? It'll be an RPG product, but really it's like a nostalgia merchandise product.
Yeah.
So that they might still do that. All right. So anyways, we're now about ready to go. I think we've got 25 people in the chat already. Again, feel free, guys, to share the link to your streams if you know people who are who might be interested in this interview. But we're now prepared to start. I've got a cat on my lap. I've got my pipe just about ready to go. Let me just light it here, and we will begin. Okay, so this is the RPG Pundit Encounter. This is episode 10 of the RPG Pundit Encounter, and tonight I have with you a guy that I'm sure some of you might know him by now, but a lot of you probably don't, because he's kind of unknown in the field. He's new in the field of the OSR. I had a look at his product, and I was tremendously impressed. Like I said in my social media promoting this episode, I don't think it's an exaggeration that what I've seen so far in 2025 of OSR products, Matt's Barrows Borderlands is by far the most interesting OSR game I've seen. Okay, it's quite an interesting RPG, and I'm sure he's going to describe it in much better fashion than I will. But the subtitle of it is a weird science fantasy, old school style role playing game set in a dark radioactive wasteland of magic, black powder, and dragons. And it is very much in the style of weird fantasy. It is almost an ideal kind of homage in its publishing, like in terms of the way it's been made. It is a fantastic homage to like old school D&D. It is not, however, a clone game. It is in fact a third wave OSR game, is what it would be defined as, because It changes rules in innovative ways. Some of which, I mean, as I was reading through the rules, I saw several parts that I thought, okay, well, I know where he got that from, and I know where he got this from, right? And so it's in the tradition of OSR, and it also matches those rules to a specific genre or setting, right? So that's the definition of a third wave OSR product. And it's a really brilliant one, though, because it is very much, it takes the weirder parts of old school D&D, of actual old school D&D, and says, well, what if we turned the focus towards this and went along with it all the way? And we're gonna be talking about that as we go along here. But obviously, first in my shows, there's always the first question is the same for everyone. Now, Matthew, I don't know how relevant this is going to be as a question to you, because typically people that I interview here have been in the hobby longer, or have been, you know, active in a kind of publishing or YouTubing or whatever way in the hobby longer. But it's the first question nonetheless. So in the short time that you have been now involved in creating RPGs and whatnot, who has been good to you and who has been bad to you? It's the opportunity to praise and to call out people.
So, yeah, I mean, I know Griff Morgan, who did The Secrets of Blackmoor. He was one of the first to share the game. I was bothering him on Facebook one time because I was planning on going to DaveCon, and I was asking a bunch of questions and stuff. It was my first convention. And then I was like, oh, also, by the way, I'm writing this set of rules. And he shared it around, gave me some advice on how to, you know, post it online, whatnot. I'm technologically off social media most of the time. Well, until recently. Now I feel like I'm on it every day. But so he was one of the first to share the game. And then as far as who's been bad, this is going to be a funny one because I know he's watching right now. But my first critical comment or critical review of the game that I got, I was reading it. I'm like, well, who's this guy? What is this about? You know, and I'm flipping through it. And he asked a bunch of questions about the game, like, why did this need to be in there? Why did that need to be in there? And so I gave him my number and said to call me. And we had a conversation about the game, and we talked for like 2 hours long. And by the end of the conversation, he said, cool, I still don't like your rules, but I get why you did it, and I love it now. So that was a good one. But yeah, it was really everyone that I've talked to about the game seems to, even if they don't like the rules, they like the attempt, or they like the style that it comes in and such. So no terrible reviews. That doesn't mean y'all go out and just write a bunch of terrible reviews, but you know. But yeah, that's
you haven't been canceled yet. Okay.
Right.
Good to know.
Yeah,
so this is
new writer. So
this is your very first RPG product, is that right?
Yeah, I had written a couple things in the past that they weren't games. They were just sort of talks about certain mechanics or certain ruling, or little tidbits about my setting and such like that. But
it's your first commercial project.
Yeah.
Sure, right?
Yes.
In terms of RPGs.
Yeah, definitely is. I've been playing though for a little over a decade now. I'm 25, so I didn't have much time before then to play it.
So you are not an original old school guy.
Correct. Correct. I started playing when the year 5th edition came out. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We started in high school from a small town originally. So when nobody else in the town plays and one of your friends shows up and says, hey, I got this box set for this game, Dungeons and Dragons, like they talk about in the movies, we're like, yeah, let's do it. And we didn't read the books for like 3 years. So we just kind of made stuff up, went with it, played in the lunchroom for like 30 minutes a day. And then eventually we found the older games and thought they were a lot more fun. So they were a lot more like the movies I watched growing up. So I watched like Conan the Barbarian with my dad and stuff like that. And so when we were playing 5th edition and everyone's flying around and everybody's purple or a cat person or whatever. It just didn't feel like big dude with a sword fighting a monster. So
yeah, it really degrades the classicism of D&D, right? Of it being something that feels epic and mythical, you know, because instead it just becomes this kind of cartoony sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I can't say that
okay
it was
in some settings, right? Like, you know, my own World of the Last Sun is full of ridiculous cartoony stuff, right? But
yeah, and
if it's humor, then it works. But if you're trying to take it seriously, it's really hard.
And you know, I can't really say it's a bad game because it was the first game we played. So if I had not played that, I might have never played anything. So they marketed it well, but we very quickly diverged to the older games. We tried some Pathfinder first, and then we were like, okay, now that we've tried a different system, this kind of opens it up to trying a bunch of other stuff. So then I didn't like Pathfinder either, and then we tried to go back to like 3rd edition and 2nd edition. I was like, still not there. 1st edition was really fun. We played some Hyperborea as well, and that was awesome. And then we were like, okay, well, there's still so much here for me to have to know. And we went back and played basic and then original D&D. And once we got to original D&D, I was like, perfect. This is a skeleton. That's what I wanted. I wanted bare bones and then work from there.
Build from it, yeah.
Right.
And have you played a lot of OSR games?
Yeah, quite a few. Like I mentioned, Hyperborea, and then Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. And then we played some Shadow Dark at one point. Shadow Dark was a good bridge, you know, from 5th edition and OSR games. And then we've played some offshoot games like Cairn, and we've even done some like solo games at the table with GM-less play. So Alex T makes a bunch of those, like Cairn Athalis and Disciple of Bone and Shadow. But yeah, we nowadays we play about 15 different TTRPGs a year. So,
and how often does your group get together?
Well, we have an always on campaign right now. So we play almost every night, or if I'm not running a game, one of the other referees is running a game. But there's always some sort of interaction every day, even if it's as simple as they're texting me actions for their party or something. And then once a month we have a big table game. Yeah. So
are you married?
I am engaged. So okay. I'm lucky enough to be engaged with somebody that also plays the games with us.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess you're all right. Yeah. Because I'm thinking that by the amount that you're playing there, you know, like, that could be tough. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of married guys might be pretty jealous of that.
Probably. Yeah, it was like a month into us dating that I was like, you should play this game with us. She's like, I don't play the nerd Math Rocks game. And I'm like, no, you should come try it. And then now she's in love with the game, and we make her play. Maybe she's pretending, I don't know, but she plays with us every time.
Well, that's good. I think you can tell usually when a spouse or a couple or whatever, it's hard to keep up a level of actual enthusiasm if you're faking it, you know, like to
yes,
sincere the whole time, right? So if it looks like usually she's having fun, she probably is. So I was kind of going to ask about the inspiration for Barrows and Borderlands, but first of all, as I understand it, from what I think you wrote to me or said to me when we were preparing for you showing up here, Barrows and Borderlands is based on your own campaign. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we started with an OD&D campaign with a little bit of, well, we started with Holmes Basic, which is basically OD&D. So, and then it sort of branched out from there. We were trying out some like Lamentations of the Flame Princess rules and just sort of adding stuff in. And it was just one thing after another was like, well, we don't like that. Well, let's put this in there. And we don't like that. Let's put this in there. So it's sort of an amalgamation of the things that we like at our table. And just like every good rule system, it gets changed constantly. So when one of the other referees in the group is running Barrows and Borderlands, they go, well, I hate that Matt did this, so we're running it like this tonight. And that's just the way it goes.
I kind of could tell when I was reading it that it was something that you had clearly played out and jiggled with the mechanics. And almost all the RPGs I write or RPG settings I make, and there's a lot of them now, right, have been based on campaigns that I was running first, right? Now there's one or two exceptions, like Star Adventure, which is a very bare bones science fiction game, was a set of rules I created to be able to run Star Wars in an OSR setting, right? So that's an exception. But for example, Lion and Dragon began from my Dark Albion campaign, which was a Lamentations campaign, and then we started changing the rules because Lamentations didn't quite fit the ultra medieval style we wanted to have until it transformed into what is today Lion and Dragon. And of course, that's also Baptism of Fire. And so that is like, I think, a key qualification for game designers is that a system that you've thought up in your head and not actually played through, even if you play test it later, it's not going to end up looking the same as a system that organically develops in the process of running a campaign, right? That makes it very, very different. Anyhow, so let me see what I want to ask first here. So were you always intending to try to turn this into a published work, or was that something that also developed over time?
Yeah, so that also came later. So originally I had written up just a primer for our group that just stated the basics of the rules that were different from OD&D. I was full of art that I wasn't allowed to sell. You know, it was just me printing it out for my players. And they loved it enough that they said, "Oh, you've got to publish this. You've got to turn it into something." I kept telling them no, because I'm like, you know how much work goes into. I'm gonna have to. It's actually gonna have to look good. But
true.
Eventually I caved, and here we are. Now the players have been awesome at keeping me writing, because there were a few times I just was sitting there and I went, "Oh man, we just run this at the table or something, you know? Like, all of you know the rules, so I really need to put it down." But yeah, they made me finish it.
That's
which
good.
is I'm happy for.
Yeah. And how much of a response have you had so far in terms of your success, let's say, in selling the game?
It's pretty good. I mean, so the first printing, I made all the boxes by hand. I just got sheets of cardboard or chipboard, and then wrapped it and everything. And we made 40 of them, and that sold out in like a week and a half. And
did you do that with a crowdfunder, or did you just do it on a client-to-client basis sort of thing?
It was client-to-client, but I was like, well, even if it doesn't go well, I'll have 40 of these boxes for us to have, and all the players can have a game. And so that was my original thought. And then none of the players were able to get it because they immediately sold. And so I went, oh, okay, well, maybe I have to have more boxes than this. But yeah, I didn't crowdfund or anything. I had we had a tiny bit in our savings that I took, and I just went, okay, we're gonna buy a bunch of cardboard and a bunch of wrap and printing supplies. Originally, the first printing of the game was printed on a small inkjet printer out here in the shed. And then the second printing, I was like, okay, well, we're gonna order more boxes. I'm starting to think that maybe I didn't order enough, because I might have to do a third printing, which is a good problem to have.
The word is getting out. So
yes.
But have you actually been making a profit off of this?
We just recently broke even with all the stuff I spent on printing supplies and boxes and whatnot. So as of now, yes.
All right, well, that's good. That's a good sign, because I mean, a lot of people who do like Kickstarters and stuff never actually break even, So I mean, Gods of the Forbidden North. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, but it's another guy that I had on here. he's like a huge response, right? Three massive crowdfunders, and only by the end of the third does he expect to break even. You know, so I don't get that. That's why I never use Kickstarter. I just put everything on drive-through or with some other publisher, and then just get the royalty checks. You know.
I didn't want to risk a Kickstarter because my whole thought was, you know, if I'm going to sell something to someone, I want it to already be done. So,
yes, absolutely, we have exactly the same perspective.
Yeah, I didn't like the idea of somebody signing up for something that wasn't made yet. And you know, that's not saying anything bad about people that do Kickstarters.
No, but
I've seen a lot of good ones, but
a lot of people don't seem to have the same fear of disappointing the people that are going to be fans of yours, right? If you for whatever happens, right, like you break your leg or something, I know you're hospitalized, and then you can't fulfill what you promised. It's, you know, I don't know. For me, that's a big deal. I think some people, I mean, you're right. There's probably a lot of people that would also feel really bad about it, but they still take that risk, you know? So if I was ever going to do a Kickstarter, I'd make sure I had everything ready before doing the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter would essentially just be to make sure I got enough sales to go through with it, you know, and that would be it.
Right. Yeah, no, I you know, when it first started and I was getting everything together, I was like, okay, well, even if I lose on the money I just spent on the cardboard, I can keep working and, you know, make it back up, because I'm also a videographer. But at the end of each day, driving 30 minutes, filming something downtown, being there until nighttime, and then driving back, I'd just start typing or figuring out how to print it correctly. It took me months to figure out the kind of paper that they used in original D&D so that I could try and get something similar feeling in your hand. And, you know, like with the textured cover paper on the outside and whatnot, which they don't make that color as original D&D anymore, that parchment color of the same weight.
Oh, no, it's impossible to get. Yeah, I've heard about that. Because it's that color just used to be stuff that cheap printers did for pamphlets and things, right? But nowadays, nobody uses it.
Now it's sought after. But and then the boxes, the second printing boxes, I was able to get with the wood grain already on them, which was nice. But and I made them a little bit taller than the original D&D box so that you could fit any other little booklets I came out with later.
Mm-hmm.
But
so your game is, like I said, it's not a clone, right? It's not a copy of D&D, of Holmes or of any other edition. And there's kind of two aspects to what make it special, which are what I've already kind of mentioned, which is first that you have a very specific genre / setting. I mean, it's not a very detailed setting, but you do have, in the first booklet, you have an introduction to like the context of it, and you talk about, for example, the gods in the setting and things like that. I think you have room for expansion and all that if I'm gonna later on give you some critiques about it. But it's the setting is very clearly of a particular genre, and then the mechanics that you have work to try to fulfill that genre. And I'm guessing, in terms of the genre influences that you've had, one of them that stands out is like, there's a lot of Jack Vance sort of stuff there, right? Of the, you know, Dying Earth style, and it's much more intensely front loaded than what you get, because I mean, obviously Dying Earth was an influence on the original D&D, but not nearly as much as it is, I think, in your game, right?
Yes.
And connected to that are other kind of like, not post-apocalyptic, but like long-term post-apocalyptic settings, right? Like obviously something terrible happened thousands of years ago, and now everything's fucked up. That's a big part of your setting. And of course, the weird fantasy element, you know, where you have, it's a setting that you have these now marginal civilizations that continue to fall backwards as the world continues to collapse. And there's you can find elements of things that are like high-tech science fiction sort of stuff if you go searching in in the Borderlands, and at the same time, like the some of the local remaining states, they can still produce like wheel lock pistols and things like that, but they can't make mecha armor anymore, right? Or something like that. You know, so it's got that whole element of this kind of long-term degraded world. But it's much more like it has some similarities to my World of the Last Sun, which is similar to that. It's like there's the great disaster that happened 10,000 years ago, and now the world is a mess, and there are some parts of the world that are very high tech, some that are very low tech, etc. But my setting is what you would call a Gonzo setting, because it has inherently kind of a thematic of ridiculousness and failure, which is also something you see in some of Vance's work and in other sort of stuff in that genre. Yours, I would say, is more directly weird fantasy, because it doesn't really play that up, say, to like show it's got very little of stuff that is kind of bordering on the ridiculous. You know, there's kind of like 3 levels to the weird fantasy spectrum, which is like, this is like really weird stuff, but not particularly funny or silly, right? Then there's like the weird stuff that is that verges into the point of kind of disbelief, and then there's Venture Satanis, right? So those are the 3 options, right? It's weird fantasy, weird Gonzo fantasy, and stupid Gonzo fantasy, right? All 3 of them have their virtues.
Sometimes our sessions devolve into the latter, but it just depends on.
That happens to me too, right? Because, like, you know, if you look at my products, like Baptism of Fire, Sword and Caravan, Dark Albion, as written, are super serious, right? But in the actual campaigns in the game, even though it's not a silly campaign the way Last Sun is, inevitably stupid things happen, right? And funny things happen, you know, and sometimes that bleeds into the world itself, you know.
There's a funny picture that I always show my players, and it's that one where it's the Fellowship of the Ring. It's like what you think your campaign is going to be like, and then it's got Monty Python's Holy Grail next to it, and so what it actually is. So, but yeah, no, I mean, we've got Jack Vance. I tell people that what I wanted in my game was Solomon Kane riding on a radioactive dinosaur with a laser gun in his hand, fighting a sorcerer, and that's sort of what it wound up being. But when you bring up the lore, I had so much that I wanted to put in there, and I kept stopping myself going, there's only so much people are going to want in these. And so,
now you can work on a setting product at some point, right? And
I do have a large spattering of the lore also in our latest free PDF that we just released, Radioactive Boogaloo, that goes into some of the histories and, you know, how did this world wind up looking the way it did. But yeah, that was another thing I talked with the guy that left the critique was, you know, I want to see more of the world. And I went, okay. Now that I know y'all want to see more, I can do that. And we've been working on parts of the setting for that entire decade. Like, parts of it were the ideas we'd come up with a couple weeks after our first D&D play. But yeah, I mean, Jack Vance, Howard, Lovecraft, Liber, those are some of my favorite authors. So, and you know, we in our home games, we also throw in varying degrees, more or less, of the sci-fi. Just last night, they were fighting robots. But then if you go further to the edge of the Borderlands, you might find a village where their biggest concern is the children going missing in the night. And they don't care. They don't know anything about the robots. They've got, like you said, wheel lock. One guy in town has a wheel lock because he's the richest guy in town. Everyone else has pitchforks and clubs, and they don't know what else to do. And then the magic in the world is supposed to be this chaotic, evil thing that you don't really know if you can control it, which is where I kind of went the Vancian magic style of OD&D, I kind of took a verge off of that back to where it was in, say, like Chainmail with the roll to cast. But
yeah, well, that's one of the things I really like about it, and we're going to talk a bit more about that, I guess. Just before we continue, we're up to like 42 people watching right now, 45 people watching right now, sorry. And I'll just comment to everyone that you can feel free to post questions if you like for Matt about his product. We'll try to answer some of them. The live stream, while it's live, I never monetize it so that people don't get interrupted by ads. But if you want to show your appreciation and help pay for Domino's cat toy fund, you can feel free to do a super chat. You don't have to do a super chat for me to read your question, but obviously if you do a super chat, I will read whatever your comment or question is, as long as it won't get me banned from YouTube. Okay. We've got one here from TXG8878. What's the hardest aspect of game design? What would you have done differently if you had to do it all over again?
I think the hardest part is doing it all over again, and rewriting a bunch of stuff. And, like I think I've come up with a really cool idea for a rule, and then we play it at the table and it's just terrible. And we're like, no, get rid of it. That was bad. It was mainly just sitting there for hours at a time. Maybe layout design, that kind of stuff. The stuff where you already know what's supposed to be on there, but you're just trying to make the page look the way you want it to. Otherwise, as far as game design goes, our group, we come up with rules all the time. And we play a lot of different games. I'd say other than my game, my favorites are like Hyperborea or Empire of the Petal Throne, other weird science fantasy stuff. I do have our Baptism of Fire that I'm trying to convince our group to do a less magical adventure in Poland. So we're excited about that. And we also play board games. So like the Dungeon board game, Cosmic Encounters. So and a lot of those we use in our main campaign. So if the players go and they want to do a solo dungeon, or we're waiting on people to show up for the session, they can bring their characters into the dungeon board game and they can leave with whatever treasure they find. But stuff like that. So we get rules from everywhere. We just play and see what we have fun doing.
All right. Well, that's a good answer. Let me see here. Where was I? Well, I think we could get to talking a bit about, for the purpose of the people that are not familiar yet with your game. We can talk a bit about what are the features of your game. So first of all, as I pointed out there, the setting is a very particular setting, basically a kind of dying earth type of setting where there's still some like kingdoms and empires and things, but they're all basically slowly falling away as civilization continues to collapse. The character classes, I mean, the game system is, of course, OSR, right? You roll your 6 basic stats, and there's a 7th stat called radiation resist, because apparently there's a lot of areas in this world that have all kinds of radiation to them that can be, I guess, unhealthy for certain people. And the classes, well, let's start with the races. So you've got your human, and then you have kobolds, and you also have starborn, which are basically a kind of elf with another name, right? Then there's the halfling, the dwarf. Those are pretty much as standard. Then you have the mycelian, which is a fungus man, basically. You have a mutant, someone who has been mutated, I guess, by radiation or inherited those mutations. You have a fairy, and then you have a green skull, which is, I'm not sure. I was trying to be certain of whether is a green skull an undead or a creature that is somewhere in between the living and the dead.
It's a half-life kind of creature.
Yeah,
They're so heavily irradiated that they're just glowing with radiation. A lot of them are just walking bones as if they were undead. And then some of them you realize they just have translucent skin. You can see through them. Yeah, those were kind of, so as far as putting the halflings and dwarves and starborns in, I know that I wanted the starborns originally because we had this whole idea that the stars in the night sky were no longer big balls of gas. They were sentient beings, that maybe falling stars, them hitting the ground and losing their memories or their powers. And then when I was writing up the rules, I went, well, do I need to put elves in here if I've already got those guys? And I decided not. And then as far as halflings and dwarfs, we have very few people actually decide to play as halflings and dwarfs, but I thought I needed them in there in case somebody did want to. The kobold was in there half because I liked the idea that in the older game, they described it as sort of dog-headed reptilian mix hybrids. And then you see stuff like the Japanese took that a completely different way. And now in Japanese D&D and Japanese media, they're just full dog people. And it was kind of a joke between us and our friends that we were like, well, we've got to have these dog people in here. 5th edition has all these crazy flying things. We'll put the dog person in the game. And then most people either play human, from what I've seen at our play test, or they will go mutant or green skull. Those are like the 3 favorites. I'm partial to the human that has nothing more than his sword fighting the sorcerer. So, but yeah, we get a weird mix at the table sometimes. Usually, though, it winds up working because it is in this weird Borderlands where if you're there for long enough, chances are you are going to be a mutant, or you're going to be this weird thing, or maybe the Fae are crawling out of the earth once again to reclaim it, like in Wizards, the movie. And that also was a good
another clear influence on your game is Wizards.
Oh yes, it's one of my favorites. And when we were thinking about the races, we were coming up with a bunch of other ones, and I was like, well, no, let's stop here because we don't want to have a zoo running around the Borderlands. But I do leave a section at the bottom. Most races from other OSR games, if they do a separate race from class, could easily be ported into this game, or one of my races could easily be ported out. Same goes for a lot of the rules. I wanted it to be modular for the people that, because I knew people were going to look at a few of the rules and say, well, I don't want to use that. So let's make sure that the game works without it, and stuff like that.
So we've got Solar RPG guy here says his fiance plays a brownie character riding a raptor.
Yep.
You can confirm if that's true or not. I did notice in the monsters booklet that you have an awful lot of dinosaurs in there.
Yes, I do. Our world has a lot of dinosaurs in it. I thought that would be cool to have as a common enemy roaming the Borderlands as these wild beasts are roaming again free. But yeah, they had, let me see, it was like 10 people, 10 player characters. They had some henchmen, and they decided they were going to go into this cave where there was a raptor in there. And the first thing out of my fiance's mouth was, oh, I'm going to tame it. And in my head, I'm going, I guess I'm sleeping on the couch tonight because this is going to kill her. And then the entire party said, no, we're going to domesticate this raptor. They lost one character trying to pin it down. It took the 9 other characters to get it. And after many rolls and keeping it under lock and key, something PETA wouldn't be happy about, they eventually got their raptor.
We've got a $10 super chat here from Lord Mateos. Thank you so much, Lord Mateos. Why did you choose an OSR game design? I'm not just talking aesthetics, which is great marketing, by the way. You could have made this game using a Shadow Dark-esque D20 design in mind, but you didn't. Why?
I think, at least at our table, We also have a few people that have never played any of the older games. We get guys that come into the shop that are still in high school. The only thing I've ever heard of is 5th edition. So it was mainly for them to get a chance to try something that felt like it. Because it does have a feel to it when you use Thaco, or if you're rolling up a spell and you're using D6s instead of a D20, or if you're doing pretty much anything else, every little piece kind of feels like a mini game. Give the other dice some love. But that's
since someone brought up Shadow Dark, I have to say that in my opinion, if your fiance was a marketing specialist, the way the chick that did Shadow Dark's fiance is a marketing specialist, you would probably be doing really, really well with this game, because to me this is like, I'm not to cast aspersion on Shadow Dark. It does what it does fairly well, which is mostly for the kind of dungeon crawling aspect of things, right? But I think that this game in some ways is what OSR people would like something like Shadow Dark to be, you know. So
I think Shadow Dark is a good.
Yeah, it is. It's a fine game, but
it's good for people coming backwards. Like if it's their first game from something like 5th edition, it's pretty good for that.
Yeah, but if you had a marketing person on your on your side there, you would probably be able to do really, really well with this game. We've got another super chat here. I've got to remember to go back later to a non-super chat, but Space Zeus, $10. One big feature advanced setting were outlandishly powerful and fickle wizards. Have you got those? We are going to talk a bit more about the magic later, but you can answer the question now if you like.
Yeah, I love throwing random towers with wizards in them, doing all kinds of heinous things. So when I ran it at DaveCon for a couple guys, we had a big Cryomancer's Tower with the 90-year-old naked wizard out front with nothing on but a hat, and they were like, oh, okay, obviously wizard, let's go kill him. But yeah, we love wacky, zany, fickle wizards.
There we go. Okay, going back up for a second. Death Angel Shadow asks, so what's the basis for the radiation?
Yeah, so that is a big inspiration from Metamorphosis Alpha, one of my other favorite games. I love the idea that it's sort of this stat where there's always a little chance that you're either going to take some damage or you can get mutated. And it's not entirely realistic mutations, but I just love the ideas of, oh, I've gotten dropped into a vat of radioactive chemical or something, and now I've got radioactive eyes, or a third arm grows out but it's not on your side, it's attacking you, that kind of stuff. So that was one of the earliest rules we added to the game.
Good stuff. Let me just see if there's anything else here. Apparently super chats now count towards XP. I like how there's now XP in the live streams of YouTube. Adino the Esnite says this game sounds like it could do a Thundar the Barbarian game. That's a plus for me.
In the Radioactive Boogaloo PDF, when I talk about the world ending, there's a section where my buddy Mark recommended I put in there in parentheses, imagine the opening to Thundar, but way worse. So you could totally do a Thundar game with it. I do think, though, that, which is the reason I did it for this, but my favorite games are the ones that are written for a setting. Because if I wanted to do just plain Jane medieval fantasy, I could just grab my OD&D books and have just as good a time. But when I look at stuff like, well, Baptism of Fire, Hyperborea, Empire of the Petal Throne, those games were written for an intended place and an intended time. So yeah, but it could easily work for Thundar.
So hang on, got another super chat here. Super chat with no text. Larry Tapp, $9.99. Thank you very much, Larry. If you accidentally didn't put in your question, you can feel free to put it in now if you want, or your comment or whatever. But if not, if you were just sending me some cash for Domino, thank you very much. Moving on to character classes, you've got some that at least by name seem pretty standard: fighter, magic user, cleric, thief. And then you have 3 other classes that are less standard. You have the half-caster, the gamma, and the psychic. And do you want to tell us about any or all of those?
Yeah, so the gamma, obviously you can pick a mutant as your race, and then in my head I'm thinking, okay, so they get a mutation off the mutation table. And then we were talking with the friends, we're like, well, what about somebody that's just so jacked up on mutations that's just who they are? They're just using their mutations to fight with. So the gamma class, they get to roll up 1 to 4 additional mutations. And then the half-caster is, the sword and spell fantasy of you see it more in stuff like the Warlock from Hyperborea, or I think Lamentations of Flame Princess, their elf was kind of a half-caster. So it was mainly to get that fantasy in there as well. But then the psychic is sort of one of my reworks of the psionics rules from OD&D. And I'd read a bunch of blogs, a bunch of people worked on it for a very long time trying to make it work, and I just couldn't have my system without psionics in it, because that was a big part of our setting. And I wanted it to feel different than just here's some psychic sounding spells. So yeah, we have a D6 based psionic system. Is based on one that I had seen somebody made for Lamentations, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. They've got D6 rolling for psionics and such, but I felt like it was missing a couple things, like psychically dueling with other psychics. And so I added some of that back in from OD&D. And then the class, they just get consistent psychic powers as they level up, versus a wild psychic. They may or may not get something every time they level up. Maybe it's a power here, a power there, or nothing at all. But yeah.
Let's see here. Matthew. Oh, wait, is that you?
Not me.
Oh no, sorry. That's the other, you're a different Matthew. Okay, Matthew Stan says, "What do you think of the linear warrior exponential wizard growth trope?"
I don't know. I have sort of a curve with a lot of their XP leveling up, if that's what you're referring to. Yeah, the at least if I remember correctly, one of them levels up a bit faster at the beginning, but then slows down quite a bit as time moves on. Make sure I'm not. Yeah. So the got my set of booklets right here.
Well, if we look at it here, the fighting man needs 2,000 XP to get to level 2, 2001 technically. The magic user needs 2,500. The fighter to get to level 10 needs 360,000. The magic user only needs 200,000.
Yes.
So
the magic user, they will get there faster if they can get there. So they're much squishier throughout the game, but I see them as being able to learn from their experiences easier than the fighting man. And that's how it was in original D&D too.
It's true. But that is kind of the birth of the problem with that trope, right? Is that the higher level the wizard gets, the more overpowered he is compared to the fighter. However, you've got a magic system that is different, and that might mitigate that quite a bit from what I've seen.
It definitely has. But yeah, I like the idea though that at least with NPCs, it's an uphill battle for the fighting man to go up against these powerful wizards in their towers. Sort of, I think of magic in my setting as a cheat code with risk. Like, yes, I'm going to get tons of power, but at what cost? And I don't know if you want to talk about the magic system yet, but yeah,
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Got a message from a Larry Tapp here. I've heard great things about your parents. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, they love to hang out in the YouTube and comment on videos. But yeah, so yeah, my parents are great. They were one of the big early supporters of me actually writing the game. They had to listen to me complain a lot whenever I was getting it all put together. And yeah, they're just awesome. I thank them in the front cover.
There you go. That's nice. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the classes and about the races, and you've got a pretty interesting mutation table for the gamma there. You also have a section where you do like birth signs that gives a special benefit to, depending on what your astrological element was. You have a very basic set of skills that come out of that kind of very old school style, where they're not skill points or anything like that. They're just things your character learned, and you don't necessarily roll for that. It just is a question of, do you know how to do it or not?
I was inspired by Empire of the Petal Throne for the layout of that social class system, but yeah,
I noticed that. So you have a mechanic for resisting radiation, which is based entirely on that one attribute that you added, the radiation resisting versus the intensity level. And so what happens if you take radiation in the game?
Yeah, so if you take radiation in the game, there's a radiation level, so the amount, how intense it is, and you compare that to your stat on the chart, and that's how many d6s of damage you'll take, or none at all. And every point of damage is a percentage chance to mutate. And if it were to kill you, then it's a base 20% chance that it mutates you instead.
Okay.
But I did have a question a while back too about in that critique I got about why I had it as a separate stat, not just another saving throw. And it mainly had to do with the feeling of the game when you're making your character and radiation comes up as one of the core attributes, just as a way to say, hey, this should be, not only could be, but should be important, at least in this setting. My players get mutated all the time, or just die from the horrible radiation that comes off of everything. But yeah, so that's why I have it in there as a stat and so prevalent at the beginning. But it's a pretty simple way of doing it. I didn't want it to be overbearing and add a bunch of complicated stuff to the game that you didn't need, but you just compare the intensity to your stat and see how well off you go or not at all.
All right. Well, that's and how, like, is radiation something that shows up? Because I haven't, like, I skimmed through most of the rules because I'm still waiting to get the booklets. We were hoping they were going to be here by now, but they're going to be here sometime in the next week or so. Is there specific places that you specify that radiation is likely to be found?
Yeah, so I have another terrain type called the Dead Zone, and the whole area is always irradiated. It's just a random, you can roll 3d6, and that tells you how irradiated it is that day. Versus, or in addition to, some of the monsters leak radiation off of them. We have a radioactive zombie velociraptor monster in the game. And they're, being around these things always has a chance of irradiating you. So,
right. Okay. Your combat is, a large part of it is basically inspired by old D&D, but you add a few particular mechanics or slightly different modifications to things, which are all pretty good from what I can see. You have a basic setup for critical hits. If you get a 20, you can either do a bit of extra damage, or if you roll lucky, you can do multiples of damage. You have dueling rules in it, which is quite interesting. I'd have to see how that actually works in practice. I assume you've used it.
Yes, that was one we wanted to have something in there for a situation that came up in our game, and so I grabbed my chainmail book and I went, well, let's use the jousting matrix for it, because this feels like we need something a little bit more, and it kind of plays out like a grand rock paper scissors game, but it's fun whenever you have sort of like organized duels, or some knights are roaming the borderlands and one of them points to you and says, duel me now, kind of things. It comes up every once in a while in our games, and it's always a fun little moment.
All right. So next, the second book is called Psychics and Sorcerers. With like all of these come in the box set, right? There's 4 booklets come in the box set, right?
Yeah.
So the second one is, sorry.
Yes, they do.
All right. So Psychics and Sorcerers gives you the magic rules and the psionics rules, basically.
Yes.
And you do not do Vancian memorization. Instead, you do a spell check that is used to see, like you said earlier, that you roll dice, and if you get a high enough roll, then the spell immediately takes effect. Otherwise, it can end up being delayed, or it is possible for there to be some other conditions. The delay can be shorter or longer, depending. And it's possible if you get a 2, because it's 2d6 that you roll, right? So if you get a 2, then you have a critical miscast, which has its own table of effects that can happen, which
horrifying, terrible things.
Yeah, some of them are immediately lethal, which in retrospect answers a bit of the question of the quadratic wizard problem, which is that if every time you are rolling, there is, what is it, a 1 in 36 chance that you're just going to die. Well, you're not necessarily, because you'd have to do that and then roll really bad on the miscast table. But there's a very serious risk involved every time a wizard casts a spell.
Yes. Yeah.
That means wizards are unlikely to live to a ripe old age if they're doing a lot of magic.
And that also means the ones that did live to a ripe old age are ones you should be wary of, because that means that they're cunning or really good or lucky. So, but yeah, no, we've had it in our game for a while. That was also like right with the radiation stuff came in. We play a lot of chainmail war games at our table too, and I just love rolling 2 6-sided dice to cast. But then we were like, well, if we're gonna let the magic users cast spells over and over again, then there's got to be a downside to it, and they level up faster. So, you might roll on the miscast table and it's not that bad. Maybe you just age a year, but some of them they cause your insides to become outsides, or they open up a portal to Atlantis while it's still underwater. So now you've just got this infinite stream of water coming in. Yeah, some of them are much more horrifying than others. We had one time they were fighting some cultist wizards, and the cultists just go, okay, well, they're casting magic missile on you. And the next thing you know, I roll snake eyes. So now the cultist, his bones disappear in the middle of the fight, which completely turned the tide of the battle. It does stop players from choosing magic users sometimes, because they're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go that route, which is great for me, because then I get to see my sword wielding guys come in to save the day. But
yeah. And so a magic user class starts with 3 spells of their choice, and then after that they have to like learn from someone or find stuff in the wilderness or that sort of thing.
I didn't like the sorry, my bad. I didn't like the idea of getting free magic. So yeah, you have to find some sort of master to learn from, or a sage, or if you're a cleric, you got to go to a priest and learn under them. And that stopped my players from going, well, how many spells do I get? I just leveled up. I'm like, well, you don't have a master yet, so you get nothing. You've got to go find somebody. Yeah, magic's not free.
And I noticed, so if you look at the spell complexity table, you have spells from level 1 to 12. But basically, all the levels after level 5 are, I would say, pretty dangerous. And the higher level ones, basically you have to do really well on the check to succeed at them, and they will typically activate with delays. So it becomes so you can get, so in theory you could have like a first level guy that happens upon a scroll or something, and it's like a 7th level spell, right? But the possibility of him successfully pulling it off would be
Very
pretty
low.
bad.
Yeah.
pretty difficult. Yeah. Okay.
And it increases their
great.
chance.
That's a great mechanic. Sorry, I was saying it was a great mechanic because it means that players are going to get what they deserve, right? Like if you can give the guy a high level spell, right? If he wants to try to use it, then the danger is on him.
And that's what happens in our game too. And we've had it happen, and it'd be really cool that like they roll boxcars or something, and the spell is going to go off. It's delayed a little, but they've got it. Now the fighting man and the other characters just have to protect the wizard until that spell goes off. And that's really cool moments. Other times they try it and they blow up. So, or it just, nothing happens, no functions. But a lot of those too, I wanted to give the referees some tools for their high level casters to use. If they wanted a sorcerer that has some evil, dangerous spell like Black Forest or something, and they can spawn an area. And a lot of some of the spells have been based on some cool ideas. Like some of them, I take some inspiration from Errol Otis with his Necronomicon spells, and he had spells that went up to 12th or 13th level back for OD&D. And I was, obviously they seemed as though they were meant for NPCs to have, but I was like, why not? I'll open it up, open the floodgates, and see what happens for players.
Right. Oh no, hang on. That's not the question I wanted. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So what's the highest level party you've had so far via regular play?
So we have a group right now that are level 9 characters.
Which is pretty high in this game.
Right? Yeah, pretty high. That's one under what I have is the max. And they've been playing for a long while, but they play quite often too. Now that, so I think one of them does also have a 12th level spell that they stole off of another wizard, but they're too scared to cast it even at 9th level. And I think one of theirs, one of the characters right now, they got a disease from some demon, and their character is going to die in 3 months. With our campaign, that's 1-to-1 time, so he's actually got 3 months left. So he's scared to cast any spell because one of the miscast is that you age 1 to 30 years, and that might be that might end him right there. But yeah, 9th level right now I think is our highest party that's still going. And not all of them are 9th level.
Right, but so you have experienced the higher level play of the game, and so you've been able to see whether it stands up at that level as well. Yeah,
they just as easily.
Are you generally happy with that? Like, does it stand up well to you?
It does. So far, things that were dangerous in the early levels can still have the potential to be dangerous at this level. There's always a chance that a group of goblins is going to get some lucky hits. Our group, I throw them through rigorous playtesting, sometimes to their chagrin, but it's still just as deadly at high levels. You're more likely to survive, but it's the way I like it. I don't like the game to become easy.
So I noticed that your game is not in terms of like the actual spells. A lot of them are basically drawn from Dungeons and Dragons, and you've kept most of the typical ones. So I was just looking it up here, and from what I can see, a cleric can, for example, get raised dead. So you have the possibility of bringing someone back to life, which is something I don't tend to have in my games, right? Like in all of my campaigns right now, for sure, and pretty much all of my products, there's no spell. At least there might be like some incredible artifact that could bring someone back to life, right? But that's one of the things I've made a point of in my games, because in my campaigns it makes it so right away that means high level play is still dangerous, you know.
Yeah. So
I guess there's a lot of dangers anyways in your game from what I've seen, right? So there's a lot of other possible ways that a person could die and not be salvageable anyway.
And without the ability to choose a spell on level up, they have to find somebody else that knows that spell.
Teach it, yeah. So you, as the DM, could just choose to not have it available. T.S. Shanks, for some reason, says pull out Pundit's Cult of Chaos booklet. Well, there's Cult of Chaos, but I don't know if you mean that it would be usable in this game. I mean, it certainly would, right? Because it generates weird sinister sects, right? And their resources and their agendas and all of their.
That is a good one.
Abilities. So, but I'm not sure if that's what he meant by it, or if he just wanted to see the cover or something. Draxon here says, miscasting is a joy of spellcasting. Nothing quite as fun as not knowing whether spell will wipe out your enemies, nuke everyone, or blow up your arm. Yeah. Well, yeah. I do like that. I don't use that in my medieval authentic games, but I mean, with some exceptions, like you can really screw up with alchemy, for example. But definitely in the World of the Last Sun, which I run with barely modified DCC, that is one of the great fun parts of playing a wizard in that system. So I can imagine players in this game will have the same kind of combination of dread and curiosity as to how their spells come out. Ultra TTRPGer asks, is there a video game inspiration? Because I wouldn't even know, right? Because I don't play any video games. So is there a video game inspiration for B&B? The Chronomaster class made me think immediately of Chrono Trigger.
I don't play as many video games now as I used to. So I don't have a great answer for it, but the Chronomancer class that's in the Radioactive Boogaloo download, that one's actually based on the Time Lord from Dragon Magazine. I think number 65 or 68 Dragon Magazine. And, you know, I wanted to mess with some time magic in our game, so I converted it for Barrows Borderlands. But yeah, that and Chrono Trigger is a pretty good game.
So then you also have psionics in the game, and from what I've been able to make out, besides there being the psychic class, right, which you could play the psychic and then you're automatically a psionicist. I don't know. Is there? Well, I guess they still have a prime requisite, but there isn't any like other requirement that they must have to be a psychic rather.
Right.
All right. But then you also can have other classes could potentially have wild psionics, but it's not very easy because you have to have at least one of intelligence, wisdom, or charisma be above 15, and really you'd probably need multiple of those to be above or what have you for the chance to really happen. So, but you can have it. It can be done. That is obviously similar to the psionic rules in old school D&D. I never liked those psionic rules very much, but I do like, because I think I don't know where you've drawn it from, but it's certainly much more simplified than what you get in AD&D. Your psionic duels rules, they're pretty straightforward and easy to understand. And with psionic powers, you have basically you use one of the disciplines. You use a d6, is that right? And then you have to get equal or less than your current investment. So it's basically similar to how you did thief rolls and everything else.
Yeah.
It's like a 1 to 6 range, and if you have to roll equal or less than your current level in it, let's say.
Yes,
Okay.
there was I'm trying to remember the name of the blog I had first seen it in, but somebody had made a similar thing for Lamentations of the Flame Princess a while back, where they did a D6 system, and I really liked the way that it played, but I just felt like, well, I needed more disciplines, and I also wanted there to still be that rock, paper, scissors psionic duel. And, you know, a few people had talked about it, and I was like, okay, I think this would work well for Barrows and Borderlands. And then I just sort of edited a few things. But yeah, it's a D6 roll. You're trying to roll as high as you can without rolling over your investment in the ability. And then as you level up as a psychic, you can invest more of those points. And then if you're wild psionics, you start with 1, and then you can get more possibly every time you level up. You have a chance roll that you can make. But yeah, it is a very low chance. It's usually like between a 1 to 15% chance, depending on how high your stats are. So you're adding a few points based on how many, how much above 15 those intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores are. And then rolling a D100 and trying to get over 100. I did like the way that that was rolled in original D&D, but I just increased the chance ever so slightly because I wanted there to be more psychics or floating around.
So Death Angel Shadow asks, is it possible for a caster to create their own spells with research and study in lieu of training? Well, I think there's 2 questions there. Because the first is, would you say it's possible? And the second is, do you actually have mechanics by which the character could do so?
Yes, and yes. So I love it when the players do my work for me and bring a spell to the table for me to either yay or nay. And then in the game, I do have mechanics for magical research. It's not overly complicated. It boils down to rolling a d20 under your prime requisite with modifiers based on how high a level the spell is going to be. Usually the way that it works at our table is they'll bring me an idea for a spell. I will tell them how high a level it should be, and then they'll roll it. And then it takes time to study it. But yeah, they can create their own spells. It's just a little bit harder than finding somebody to teach it to them.
So we have here also any vehicle mechanics. How would we do combat wheelbarrows? Mog of War, the combat wheelbarrow, you can't get it in Barrows and Borderlands. You have to go and get issue number 33 of the Pundit Files, the Great Combat Wheel-Barrow-Maze. And that is where you will find all of your combat wheelbarrow needs, as well as a dungeon that is a really interesting contest labyrinth dungeon, unlike any other, which you can reuse over and over again by the mechanics of generating that dungeon in the product. So if you want that, if any of you want that, or any of the other Pundit Files, you need to go to the Red Room store. The link is in the description of this video, and you can check it out. Any one of the issues of the Pundit Files just cost $3.50. So if you can get $3.50, you can buy an issue of the Pundit Files. And check that one out. And also check out the latest one, issue number 34, which just came out on Wednesday. It's called Madness, and it's got a variety of different mechanics for making use of temporary or long-term insanity or mental strain, different ways that you can approach that. I think it's a pretty interesting supplement if you're looking for that sort of thing. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about vehicle mechanics in Barrows and Borderlands?
I do have a little. So my players have been messing around a little bit too much with spaceships. and I'm currently heavy in writing a sort of side game for Barrows and Borderlands, which is all about almost Buck Rogers-y or Flash Gordon style spaceship fighting. It's called Dark Star Violet, and so that one's the next little thing. But it can be a standalone spaceship skirmish game or used as the mechanics for Barrows and Borderlands. But yeah, my players are ever so closely inching towards the shiny UFO toy that they want.
Well, that's good to know. JB Garrison says, this guy looks familiar. Isn't he Bro SR?
No, I don't think they claim me yet. I've played with a couple of those guys, but I don't know if they would. Some of them might, but I don't know if all of them would enjoy my game. I change a lot, but yeah, I'm friends with like Dunder and Jay and them, and I just don't know all of them yet. So I don't know. I don't think they claim me.
Yeah, well, JB Garrison adds, I don't have a problem with the Bro SR. I just don't like 1-1 time. I don't care much for 1-1 time the way they do it, because it's not what 1-1 time was actually like in the old school. It's a fantasy that they've invented in Jeffro Johnson's head. But I more don't like their rampant anti-Semitism, right? Let's make a point about that, right? So there's a lot not to like about the Bro SR.
I use 1-to-1 time in our game, mainly just because it works at our table right now with our 30 plus players. But we play tons of games, so we do Call of Cthulhu a lot too, and we don't use it for everything.
Mog of War says, so Battle Bugatti is a go. All right. Well, we'll leave that to you, Mog, I guess. If you make a supplement for it, be sure to, maybe you can sell it at the Red Room store for 3 biddy. So it's worked for me, you know. All right. The next booklet that you have is Horrors and Treasure, and it has the index of monsters, and it's very interesting because usually in a kind of a very old school product style like this, where you don't have a lot of direct setting, what you have is implied setting, right? So your setting comes through at least in what's in the box set, in your introduction at the beginning of the first booklet, and then through the monsters that you are likely to run into, you know. And you get a lot of stuff here that makes it, if you read through it, the monsters and what they are and what they do, you get a lot more inspiration of what the world must look like, you know. So you've got stuff like, well, first aliens, right, which includes a variety of different types of aliens, including Carcossans from the city of Carcosa, the Greys, Mantids, Watchers, and then you have a lot of the standard monsters as well, but especially stuff like, well, animals and people opponents, right, like bandits and what have you. And standard and giant animals. You have a section on daemons, which has, it's pretty close to like kind of the standard of the D&D, but your introduction to that section gives it a particular kind of flavor to it.
I didn't want to leave. Sorry, I didn't want to leave people wanting. So that the Horrors and Treasure book is what made this a 4-volume set instead of a 3-volume set, because I didn't want people to miss out on some of their favorite monsters from OD&D, but I also wanted to make sure that I got in the weird ones that belong here. So yeah, it's I think over 100. I can't remember exactly how many are in there, but yeah, quite a few.
16, 18, just 1 second here, 20, 21, 22, 23. So I don't know how many you have in total, but you have 23 different types of dinosaurs in there. I don't know if you're just a big dinosaur fan or if that's something that you wanted to be a really big feature in the world.
Yeah, we like dinosaurs at our table. What is it? You're either one of 3 kinds of kids. You either like cowboys, trains, or dinosaurs, and I liked all 3. So But yeah, no, we use a lot of them. I mean, for a while we were using stuff like the first edition monster manual, which has a lot of coverage of different dinosaurs. I think even more than what I've gotten here, but
probably, yeah. That's true.
But yeah, we like to throw them into the world, and then towards the end of the Horrors and Treasures book, I bring up some of the radioactive ones, and but yeah.
You also have dragons, which are mostly the standard ones, but you also have a radiation dragon.
Yes.
It's a great touch. And you have Dinoco employees, which is now you're getting to shades of Gamma World here, right?
You don't get to leave the company. So
some ancient company that in a much more high tech period, apparently, that has still got remnants floating around. You also have an elementals. You also have a radiation elemental.
I reference more about Dinoco in the Radioactive Boogaloo download as well. But yeah, very, very futuristic. I think I call it Deco Punk before the end.
And your section on liches is very interesting because you go into detail about the creation of a lich and its characteristics. And of course, you have some of the races that you like. You've got the mycelians here, the fungus people, and so generally a lot of these are going to be stuff that's normal, but you've got enough stuff added in. Like in between giant rats and rocks, you have robots. So you've got those little aspects of the setting element that is.
If anybody likes the seven voyages of Xylothen, that's also another good one. But I got a lot of inspiration for the way he did robots for the robots in Barrows and Borderlands. So if anybody likes that game, the robots function fairly similarly to how they do there.
And then your treasure table has a lot of stuff that's going to seem pretty standard by D&D in D&D terms, right? Magic swords, magic armor, miscellaneous, etc., potions, scrolls, rings, wands, etc. But there are some things there, especially like some of the special swords that you have, and a few of the other items that are definitely stuff that you don't find. Like, in miscellaneous weapons, you might find a ray gun or a thunder gun or a Dinoco anti-material rifle.
Yeah, we have a bunch of things in there, and a lot of the magic items too are from their references to characters in our campaigns or adventures that they've been on, and I threw together a magic item. We went, oh, that'd be cool to go in here. We had a lot of fun sitting up with my players, chatting about what magic items need to be in and which ones don't. Like
I put a lot of that into the World of the Last Sun as well, right? Because if you've been playing for a while, then the campaign, the characters and what they do in it becomes part of the campaign lore.
Right. I like the idea of magic items having a history.
Yeah, of course. That's one of the really important things, and I've commented on this a lot of times. I did an issue of the Pundit Files about this, about trying to give your magic items more of a specific nature to them. And in my medieval authentic games, of course, all the magic items have connection to some kind of historical legend, lore, events, or things like that. So that makes a very big difference, because otherwise, you just have like, oh, it's a sword +1, right? Like, what is a sword +1? It's more interesting to have if you have like a sword, even if it's a sword that doesn't have the +1, but that has some specific history or quality to it. That gives it something. It might not even be a benefit in like combat, but it might be something that has plot developments to it. You do also have the Dinoco Star Armor, which is basically a power armor. So I wasn't joking when I mentioned that. I remembered it from the first time I paged through here.
I saw somebody ask about another example magic item, but the one stuck in my head recently has been the armor of Sagar, the Putrid Apostle. And that one's pretty funny. It spawns a spectral fighting man to fight by your side for as long as you wear the armor. That's based off of one of the characters in our campaign that he's a security guard, and so he doesn't get to show up to the sessions much, and he doesn't have as much time to make characters. So when he phones into the game, he's always just playing the same guy, and he gets killed all the time, and then we just drop him a level and he comes back next session. So we have this whole thing about he's just always coming back from the grave.
That's actually pretty great when you think about it. So
the players have come up with the most complicated lore for it. They all think, they're like, well, he's
that's perfect, because it gives the guy an excuse to be able to keep playing, right? And then the party and the DM make it so that it's a unique thing. It's a special feature, right? Just for that guy. That's very clever, actually.
Well, so when we put it in the game, though, we said, well, there you go. Now he gets to get summoned to everyone else's table. It gets to be everybody's problem.
Crapbone says, can you give a shout out about his work and where it's available for us latecomers? Well, we're talking about it right now. The game is Barrows Borderlands. Crapbone, if you expand the description of this live stream, you will find links to his website, Barrows Borderlands. I know you can also get it on drive-thru, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
Both of those, the website and drive-thru, right? So that's where you can get it.
If you want it physical, you got to go through the website for now. I print all of them by hand and saddle stitch them with staples and box them up and ship them out just like this. So, and they come with character sheets and dice.
Oh, really? You even include dice?
Yes.
I hope you didn't send dice for me, because otherwise I'm going to have huge trouble with the customs.
No, yours just has the booklets. Yours just has the booklets.
T.S. Shank says a major villain NPC in our campaign was an intelligent sword of talking chaotic evil and holy reaver. Yeah, I've done that before, but I can do you one better. You know, in the World Last Sun campaign, one of the characters had suffered a terrible critical hit, and luckily for them, they were near the domed city where the techno walruses live, and they're masters of cybernetics, and so they saved him, but he had lost I think 80% of his ass, so they had to make a cybernetic ass for him. That cybernetic ass later went out of control completely, and it's now still roaming around the world doing very dangerous things. That happened like years ago. This campaign has been for 12 years, right? I think that happened, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And since that time, they've only heard glimpses about what the ass is up to, right? But it is still there, and it is, well, at some point it's going to come back and bite them, you know. So it's
the ass that bites them in the ass.
The most famous item in that campaign that has gone rogue, you know. But yeah, I love it when stuff like when items become, you know, serious problems.
That's why I included the rules for lichdom as well, because I had a player character, the one that was dying. He goes, well, I just want to be a lich then. I go, are you sure? Like, I'll give you a way to become a lich, but it's not going to be easy. And then he's working with another wizard whose player is drawing up dungeons right now for his castle, Maxilla the Dread. But yeah, he chickened out of being a lich, though. He's going a different route.
So Solar RPG guy says, hey, Matt, should you tell him your idea for the identify spell?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, so I don't have the identify spell in the game. I just don't like it as a spell. I like them to figure out what the item does on their own. But in Gamma World, they have the item chart identifying feature. And so I was thinking about putting that in the Radioactive Boogaloo free supplement. So if people wanted to use that in their games, it's basically a D10 chart that you follow. And eventually you might figure out what it is, or you might accidentally set it off and blow up, or you get sent back to the beginning. And, you know, it makes it a fun little mini game to figure out what an item is, instead of just going, I cast a spell.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, yeah, I mean, I in my medieval authentic games, you don't have the identify spell. And basically there's two possible ways to identify magic. One is if you have the occultism skill, you can try doing an occultism check, mostly to determine stuff that has either obvious magical effects or items or objects that can be used in ritual magic or things like that, right? And then there is artifact lore, which mostly thieves have, which is if it's a very famous object, which a lot of magic is, because magic is very rare in that setting, they can possibly identify it as, you know, oh, this was, you know, Excalibur or something. I mean, maybe not Excalibur, but some other great item, you know, that they would be familiar with. Although, in fact, in my Sword and Caravan campaign near the beginning of the campaign, one of the characters did, in fact, confirm that the sword that Richard III found in around Glastonbury was, in fact, Excalibur, which is something that happened in real history, by the way. Shortly after being crowned King of England, Richard III ends up going and finding this sword, and he says it's Excalibur, and this proves that he's the new Arthur, and then he takes it with him on the Third Crusade, right? All that is in Sword and Caravan. He takes it along with him, but along the way, he ends up having a problem when he is in Sicily, regarding his sister who had been married to the former ruler of Sicily, and then the new one that took over was basically holding her hostage. So he decides to not go to the Holy Land. He invades Sicily instead, and you know, he wields Excalibur in battle all across Sicily. And then finally, he ends up making a deal with the guy who was basically holding his sister hostage, and he just gives him Excalibur, and that's the last we see him. And then he takes off. And by the time he gets to Acre to fight there, he's fighting with a battle axe, you know. And they say that he was the first man off the boat, and he killed 3 Muslims before stepping foot on solid ground.
Man.
You know? There you are.
Barrows Borderlands. Barrows Borderlands has Excaligun instead of Excalibur. So
that's nice. Yeah, that's brilliant. So there you go. If you want to run a campaign in the Third Crusade, Sword and Caravan, that's your campaign book.
That was one of the first ones I got of yours, Sword and Caravan. That one, and then the one about social encounters. That was the second one I got.
Social encounters is a little, you know, that was meant to be PDF only, but so many people said we want a print version that the publisher did a print version of it. It's very thin, right? But it's really useful as a way to adjudicate social interaction without using like social skills, right? Which is something
very
terrible. Good. And it's better than just role playing it, but most of it is still just role playing it, but with modifiers that are based on the reaction roll table, you know, and then you also modify like the crowd you're talking to based on their prejudices or interests or what have you. Anyway, where were we here? Okay, so the 4th book is the Underworld and Borderland Adventures book, and you give some advice there, including recommending some YouTube channels, not mine, I noticed, but that's okay, I guess.
I ran out of room. I put a bunch of them in there. I was going through the list, and
you put a lot of the big names in there. I can't really compete in terms of numbers with Dungeon Craft or Questing Beast. So, strict timekeeping. Now you realize you can have one time without it being one time as in tied to the real world, right? Like you can have an in-game calendar that basically ends up doing the same thing. Now, in some cases, I'll grant you, if you've got 30 players, like a pool of 30 players that are coming and going, and you actually want to keep strict track of where each of their characters are in terms of time, then maybe one time is a good cheat to do that, right? Like, because like it still creates problems, because if you've got a guy who can't show up, you know, shows up once in every 30 days, then you've always got to kind of either catch him up, or he just kind of is shit out of luck, right? But
so the way we
but it is actually the one place where you could have where it might, just for the sake of the DM's own sanity, be worth it to do it. Just say, okay, fuck it, one day in the real world, one day in the game world, right?
So the way we run it, and it is mainly because it makes it easier on us with having 4 different referees and 30 players. I don't think it's the end all be all necessarily, but it just makes our lives a little easier. And then, you know, when you have 4 referees, the player that can show up every night, it sort of stops him from outshining the guy that does only get to show up once every 30 days because, oh, well, now your character, you've just done 2 weeks of travel, so we'll see it. You'll see this character in 2 weeks. Make up a new one. But yeah, it's what works at our table, but might not work at everyone's. So
yeah, well, it's just that if you're running a game with four to six players, you probably don't need one time at all. But if you do, there's no reason why you have to tie it to real world time, because it's not so many players that you're going to have a problem keeping track of a fantasy calendar in its own world without having to say artificially that one day in the game world equals one day in the real world, right? So but the more people there are, the more that you could probably justify doing it that way, so that you don't lose track, right? Because if you've got to keep track of where 30 people are, that's a lot harder than keeping track of where, it's not even going to be 5 or 6, because let's say you've got 5 or 6 players, but typically 4 out of 6 are going to be in the same place doing the same thing because they're the ones that show up every time, right? So you got to keep track of 1 or 2 rogue players at any given interval, so there it doesn't really require that you link it to real time. But anyways, you do give a variety of advice here to the generation of the underworld. Some of this is stuff that experienced gamers are going to be already quite familiar with, but there could be people who get this book that would not be as familiar with it.
I mainly made this 4th one for the players in my group that were trying to be referees, and so they were just getting into making dungeons and such.
That's especially a good idea if in your campaign you've got multiple referees working at once, so that they're all kind of following the same agenda, I guess you could say. So XP in the game, characters get XP for combat, blah, blah, blah. They get XP for coins. This is all standard stuff, right? It's divided, prime requisite modifiers, etc. And that's all fine. You have in the Borderlands, you provide some stuff that's quite good. Like, for example, you've got in the castles, so you can run into a castle with an occupant. You see what type of occupant it is. There's a table of the different classes. I would say that here there's some, you've got a Borderlands monster table that is also fairly detailed, and I'm not sure how like you obviously, when you're in the Borderlands area, at least from what I've seen of your table, you are not deeply concerned about balanced encounters, right? Like,
oh, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. That's
we have
fine.
army. So,
that's intentional. That's totally fine.
Yeah, we have chainmail games as well. So like they might see 300 bandits roaming the region and then come back later with an army.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this table is probably the most used in our group because it was the most used when we were doing OD&D as well. So lots of fun.
So that there are kind of a number of different ways to approach the question of balance, right? One is the worst way of all, which is that wherever your characters go, they're going to only find opponents that are within their ability to fight immediately, right? The second would be what you've done there, which is essentially a kind of a free-for-all that is in game reflected by the incredible dangerousness of the place they're in. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could do a free-for-all that makes no sense, right? Like that would also be bad design, right? Like if in the Happy Shires there's a 1 in 10 chance of encountering a lich every time you go there, right? Like that would be bad, right? But then there's like in between that there's the possibility, I would think, to have encounter tables that are based on varying percentages of possibility for common, uncommon, and rare and ultra rare encounters, that would then provide a predictable encounter range of how dangerous this environment is. But once in a while, you're going to get a dragon in the forest that usually doesn't have a dragon or something like that, right?
And we use in our home game, we use the outdoor survival board as our wilderness for the Borderlands. But when you get the box set, if you get the box set, it also comes with a downloadable file of a handmade map that you can print out if you want and post. I'm working to try and figure out the best way to get that printed, so that it can be another thing. If people don't want to go on eBay and find an old copy of Outdoor Survival, here's another hex map that can be used. But yeah, that's the one we use at our table. And yeah, balanced encounters. I don't think we ever. Occasionally, it'll be balanced the other way, or imbalanced the other way. The party's way more powerful than what they're fighting or what they're going up against. But it winds up being really fun, especially when it is like 300 of something, and the party goes, "Oh, yeah, sure. What do we do?"
Yeah, that is fun for sure, and that can happen in a lot of my, in again, Sword and Caravan. You can easily run into a band of a couple of hundred tribesmen if you're going around the desert there. In Baptism of Fire, you can run into an entire village of angry pagans, and then you've got to figure out what you do. You've got some very nice kind of location event tables in here, but I do feel that like all of this has a lot of room for expansion, and to what I would suggest would be, if you were to make a kind of a setting supplement for this, would be that you should have certain areas, like don't try to make the whole world, obviously, but have certain places, maybe places that have become very important in your campaigns, right, that you detail as a set location, right? This area is one of the known areas. Here you are, there you've got this stuff, right? And then you have other areas that are of a certain type, that have certain qualities to them, and in those you can use random generators to create the type of things characters will encounter when they're exploring those lesser known areas, right? And so that's kind of how it works in Baptism of Fire. I end up having all of the civilized places, the towns, the cities are detailed as fixed locations, but when characters are going out into the Wilderlands, and there's a lot of Wilderland in early medieval Poland, they're likely to run into all kinds of unusual things,
And we do have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to end by saying that the tables allow for the front loading of new situations that can then become a part of the campaign, but that allows you to keep varying that. So you don't have to put in all the way, instead of putting like 50 pages of places that you're trying to come up with in your head, you do like 5 pages of tables, and it'll allow you to generate those things.
I have a feeling that you're going to enjoy the Borderlands Gazetteer when it's finished. But I right now, like the main thing that we've got going with it is we're trying to make it not walls of text Gazetteer. And mainly, like you said, have locations and NPCs and stuff like that. But that'll allow the players to visit, like in our home world, we have New Alexandria, which is sort of the almost Lankmarian city at the edge of the Borderlands. And then different castles and keeps that exist there, and Dynaco factories and whatnot. But
what was I going to say? Oh yeah. Well, I was thinking this product reminded me in some ways, and I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but there was I don't remember if it was Lamentations of the Flame Princess that published it, or if it was independently published, but it was a product that a lot of people seemed to think was really great, and when I looked at it, I thought it was pretty awful. Actually, it was a great concept, but the delivery of it was awful. It's a book called Carcosa, and it was a setting, right, of this devastated wasteland world full of Lovecraftian horrors and lost remnants of things. It had robots. There's a lot of similarity between that and the Borderlands setting in some way, but the way the guy did it where like he created a hex map and he filled every hex with stuff, right? And the problem is a lot of it was repetitive, a lot of it was nonsensical. It didn't allow for that kind of ability to generate automatically as characters go around, and do that kind of discovery. And so, like, to me, this product right now, looking at it, is already very close to what I would have hoped that book was. That book was very successful at the time, but I'm not sure how much people ended up using it. They liked the idea of it, but it didn't work out very well. But this one has that glimmer of possibility for having that, especially if you then like expand the world by creating, kingdoms and factions, and then having a whole bunch of space where you provide tools for the DM to fill in the sections that he wants in the ways that he wants.
Yeah, no, that was one of the hopes, was to have something that was usable, at least in the box set. It's, I'm not going to overload somebody with a world, but
that's product number 2, right?
Yeah.
For sure. It's a much better idea than putting, because also then the more stuff you put in the main box, the more you're gonna have to charge for it, and there is a certain curve in that.
I also had almost a limit of page space, because I wanted that feeling of being able to just plop the booklets up on the table in small format, and make them runnable. So, because if I show up with some of my heftier box sets that I've bought in the past, it does get a little bit much. But yeah, when we play original D&D, that was the feeling we got. It was, we just need these 3 little booklets and we're in. So
Carcosa, basically the world setting designed around Lester Del Rey's garbage can. Carcosa was so successful because marijuana was successful. And burritos. Yeah, well, basically, there was some cool stuff in it, but it was badly done. But it reminded me immediately of that. Now, there's another thing that kind of, in a way, reminds me of this too, which is another book that came out not around at the same time as Carcosa. We're talking about like more than 10 years ago now, so probably this is before your time. But there's another world book with rules for playing a weird D&D that was called Yun Suin. And Yun Suin was magnificent. It was fantastic. It was a really weird setting, right? Like you could play snail men and lobster men and things like that, right? And the whole thematic of it was kind of South Asian mythological stuff, right? With a lot of extra weirdness added on top, and it had a little bit of Lovecraftian sort of stuff, or weird kind of that kind of dreamy esoteric fantasy stuff to it. But what it did is it had, the basic, these are the races, these are the places in general. And then in each section, it had a whole bunch of tables that you could generate, like what you find in those large, when you're in the Lobsterman Empire or whatever it was, then you can roll to see where you are right now there and what you find there. And they had some great, this had some great generators. So that was one of the things that really inspired me to put those kind of random generators into my products. But anyway, so there is a tradition of this. In some ways, even like the Island of Purple Haunted Putrescence by Benja Satanis is in a similar vein of that same kind of weird fantasy, though again more Gonzo than yours. But I think that the combination of the really kind of old school aesthetic, like very old school aesthetic, and the weird fantasy that you've really captured, that particular kind of, it is that kind of straight weird fantasy of early Gamma World, or what's it? You just mentioned it, the game that
Metamorphosis Alpha.
Metamorphosis Alpha, that's right, which was the precursor to Gamma World, right? So you've got that style in here, right? With a heavy dose of Vance. So it's I think if people find out about this game, they're going to be having to make a whole bunch more boxes, you know, like a whole bunch.
Well, we're right now we have a little bit left of the second printing of it. And then I have the ability to do a third printing if these run out. So, but I know the first printing, like I said, I made 40 of them by hand before I went, okay, these sold in a week and a half. I'm not making any more of the cardboard by hand. I will order the cardboard put together. But all the books are still printed by hand and done. And then we do have, I'm waiting on proofs for it. But you know, we were talking about doing hardcover for those that maybe can't order like out of the country. It's easier to do drive-through RPG.
Probably a good idea. Yeah.
So we've got some hardcovers coming. I didn't like the proof of this one, so I'm waiting on another set, but you know how long that takes. And then, but I love running with the 4 little booklets at the table and having that box set feel. I think that was
those are super cool, right? But if you're going to suddenly have like 500 orders, you're going to have you're going to start having problems, right? So either you're going to have to figure out a way to make an affordable version of that box set that you're probably going to have to hire people or something, right? Or you're going to have to switch to something else and have the box set as a deluxe item or something.
I found a pretty good system as of now. I can put together and print and throw together a box set in about 15 to 20 minutes. So I've got that process down. I had to upgrade the printer, which is why I'm just now breaking profit. But yeah, and occasionally too, we'll have the players will come over and help me put the box sets together in return for pay, food, or XP. I get their choice, but you know,
fair enough.
It's been fun so far. I think it'll be easier for those that want it either as a single volume once it is print on demand, or folks that are out of the country because the shipping rates and all that. But we do have, the game is currently, once yours arrives, it'll be in 5 countries as of now.
There we go. All right, that's a start.
Right.
So I guess we're at the 2-hour mark now, which is quite a lengthy episode so far. But I guess I would ask if the audience, we still have like 36 people. That's some endurance that a lot of our fans have here. If you have any questions that you would like to pose to our guests, or to me, I guess, either way, I guess this would be the time to do it. If you, well, again, if you're looking for Barrows and Borderlands, the link is in the description of this live stream, so you can just expand press the little more thing if you're on the app or whatever, and you'll get the link to where you can pick this up. Yeah, again, last call for any final questions. Matthew Sinan says, best Gamma World-like game. I don't know if you're asking us which is our favorite Gamma World game, or if you're suggesting is Barrows and Borderlands the best Gamma World-like game. But if you're asking the latter, I don't think it is exactly Gamma World, right? Because Gamma World is essentially a game set relatively soon after some kind of nuclear war or something like that, and so it's a post-apocalyptic setting, but a typical post, like what this is like Dying Earth, that sort of thing, where it's a long after the apocalypse setting, and that makes it essentially a fantasy setting. It's not really an ongoing apocalypse. It's the end game of an apocalypse, the end result, you know. If you're asking what's the best version of Gamma World, I think it was 4th or 5th edition. The one that came out in the early 90s was my favorite.
I quite enjoy Metamorphosis Alpha.
I think that was 4th, yeah. Yeah, Metamorphosis Alpha was great too, you know, but it's actually, I didn't get to ever see Metamorphosis Alpha until the 2000s, right? Because when it had first come out, it had a very limited run, and then it was impossible to get after that, right? And I only started playing in the later half of the 1980s, so I had no experience with Metamorphosis Alpha in the OG period.
And I didn't exist.
It's really cool, actually, because it's the giant starship and all that, and it's an apocalypse inside a spaceship.
It's one of those where you can run it like once for a group, and then they get the gag of what you're running, and it's like, okay, we had our fun with that.
That's right. Yeah, there's a reason it switched over to Gamma World, and that gave it a bit more range. Solar RPG guy says, if I have a question, I can ask directly. I play at his table. All right,
there you go.
Okay, Matthew, you have one chance to get this right, says JB Garrison. Pig-faced orcs or Warcraft orcs?
Pig-faced orcs. I say it in the game. Pig-faced orcs created in the flesh pits of Erden, at least in Barrows and Borderlands they are. I have them. They were once men, but have now been turned into this. So, because evil cannot create, it can only corrupt. So,
fair enough.
There's the answer.
James D. Bacon says, is Gonzo an all or nothing designation? Are they gradients? No, there are definitely gradients of Gonzo, which run all the way from kind of magical realism Gonzo, which is weird but semi-serious, let's say, to your kind of typical fantasy Gonzo, which is a setting that is coherent and has a story to it, has a context to it, but it is filled with ridiculous elements, that are explained in the world, but in their own particular way. So I'm grabbing a cat there, and all the way then to kind of stupid Gonzo, which is Gonzo that also has a setting to it, but it's a setting that only makes sense in the absolute surface. And then finally, kind of cartoon Gonzo, right, where it's like literal Looney Tunes and anything goes, right? So there are a wide variety of Gonzo styles, and different Gonzo writers will be on different points of that spectrum, right? Let's see here. Your literary influences, Matt?
Yeah, so Vance, of course. Fritz Lieber is probably my favorite writer, though. I love Fawford and Grey Mouser. Those are my favorite stories. I like Conan.
I love those too.
They're so good. I also really love Howard's work with Conan, obviously, Kroll, Solomon Kane, or sorry, Kull the Conqueror. I was thinking of the movie Kroll. That's also a good one. But trying to think of possibly newer author. I don't read a lot of newer books, so I got to go back with the Weird Tales group. I actually give my players XP if they'll be willing to read Weird Tales magazine or any other sort of pulp fantasy fiction. But that's the only time I do out of game XP for in-game stuff, because I want them to get on the bandwagon.
And we've got Draxon says, that's wait. I got one before that. There you go. Mog of War. What about kobolds? Dog face, rat face, or dragon pups?
I like the idea of the originals where they're dog faced, but then you can see maybe some scales under their fur. Is a weird thing going on with them. And then I like the way that the translation error caused so much of a split, and now I just find that whole interaction interesting, to where modern games just have them as full lizards, and then if you look at Japan, they've got them as just dogs. So it's very interesting.
Draxon says, is there a timeline or any world events, like a timeline of future events, I guess is what he's asking, in the setting?
Yeah, so if you're talking real world, I do have some open games coming up soon for people that can pop in and join. I'm getting some of my other referees in our group to help me with that. And then if you're talking in world, the Emperor was just assassinated in our campaign by someone. It's not entirely sure who did it. May or may not have been the Black Hand, or maybe it was just old age. But anyway, so we're going to be having some political play going on with that. And I'm trying to think.
I think Draxon might have been asking, like, if in the book there is a chronology of past events or a chronology of future events that could happen later in the campaign.
Yeah, if you go, okay, so the free PDF, the Radioactive Boogaloo right now is where I'm sort of dumping a lot of lore. So if you go there, one of the first sections is a timeline of events that led to the world being how it is. And, you know, some of it's interpretive. Some of it is possibly lies. Who knows what Dynaco's been spreading, but yeah. So I get three different answers. So.
All right. Well, that's great. And last chance, anyone, if you have any particular questions for either of us, or you want to do a super chat for the Domino Fund, or in fact for me to repair my. I've been actually, since about the first half hour of this live stream, my heater went out for some. It didn't go out. It's still working, but it's not radiating any heat. And I guess I'm gonna have to fix that now. So there we go. I've been struggling with trying to get it to work, and it wasn't working. And and at the same time, of course, struggling with the cold. But that's the sacrifices that the pundit must make for his audience, and I do them gladly. Anyways, oh, okay. Here's one from Matthew Sinance. What kind of weapons do you like most in RPGs?
I was gonna say ray guns when I first saw it, but then I really like the black powder rules. I like the idea of using it, firing it, and then instead of reloading it, you go, okay, it's a club now. So that happens a lot at our table. But I do really like ray guns and laser guns. They're just fun.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how like D&D, it claims to be kind of a medieval RPG, although in fact a lot of what is in D&D is this weird mix of some medieval stuff and then some like Renaissance stuff. But as a default, it doesn't use gunpowder. While you know, like gunpowder was around for quite some time in the medieval, like the late medieval period had gunpowder. Right? It's something that I put that in Dark Albion and stuff, and it was funny how I had players that would be shocked by the fact that, you know, there's cannons and flintlocks in the War of the Roses. You know, it's
been around for longer than you think. But yeah. I also, you know, if you go back to D&D's roots, you know, I have a lot of talks with Griff and Bill Hoyt. We talk quite often, but they talk about how Blackmoor was originally almost like a fantasy sci-fi mix, because they had ray guns in Blackmoor. So there's always been kind of in there a little bit.
Blackmoor always had that aspect to it for sure. Yeah. Pundit, where's the fireplace? Well, my fireplace is downstairs. I'm in my office right now, which is upstairs. Downstairs in the living room, there's a fireplace. It's a very nice fireplace. We have used it in wintertime when my gaming group is there. But it doesn't do me much good up here. But I do actually think I have another heater down there, so I'm just going to try and see if I can plug that one in after I'm done here. Okay, Maga War, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. He says, no, we're ready for the nerd score quiz. So I guess that's it. Unless someone wants to like up the ante, right? If you want to do more than $2 super chat to force us to stay, then we will continue. But otherwise,
I do like that. I do like that one question of is it chemical gunpowder or magical smoke powder? It's chemical gunpowder in my game. The Maloresian Empire would say that would be heresy to use magical powder. They would hate that. But
makes sense. Okay, now you're getting a little bit off topic here, but what kind of coffee do you drink? I'm not sure if that's for you or for me. I'm actually drinking coffee right now, but it's a Brazilian coffee blend, and it's just iced coffee I made at home. So it's nothing special.
I normally reach for Cafe Bustelo, but I guess the right answer is a lot of coffee.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a mug of iced coffee that I will just continue to refill over the course of the entire day. So I never stop drinking coffee. Okay, So I guess Mog of War has won the day. So now we have to ask the last question, which is always the same to each person. So one of the things I realized at a certain point that was unusual about me compared to most gamers is that I don't do almost any other thing that would be very specifically kind of nerdy as in a nerd subculture, right? I don't play video games. I don't watch anime. I don't play collectible card games. I don't play weird German board games. I don't collect Funko Pops. I don't collect miniatures, baseball cards, or comic books, right? I mean, I read comic books as a kid, but I don't have them now. I don't buy dozens of novels of the Forgotten Realms or Star Trek or something like that. I don't in fact read novels at all anymore, pretty much. There's nothing. I don't cosplay. The only nerdy thing I do that is part of a direct nerd subculture is RPGs, which I do a ton, obviously, and it's my career and everything else, right? So I have been asking every person that comes on the encounter, we have been trying to see who is the least nerdy person that comes onto the encounter. So far, the reigning champion, who has been so for quite a few episodes already, is Driving and Dragons, because Driving and Dragons also does basically nothing nerdy except play RPGs, right? He spends the rest of his time fixing cars and presumably trying to stay out of Boss Hogg's sites or something like that. But everybody else has answered some degree of nerdiness of some kind, right?
I might win the opposite direction.
Dan Servio says Pundit is a Doctor Who nerd. Well, I am someone who watches a lot of Doctor Who. As a kid, I watched Doctor Who all through the
Who's
80s.
your favorite?
And there's more than one of them, but and I did watch it when the new series came out. But I don't do Doctor Who fandom stuff, right? So if you say, well, no, I'm still a nerd because I watched the Avengers movie, that's stupid, because everybody watched the Avengers movie. That's just pop culture at this point. It's not actually a specifically nerdy thing to do. Now, if you collect a bunch of Avengers stuff or cosplay as an Avenger, then yes, that's nerdy, right? If you dress up as Doctor Who, or you have, I don't know, Doctor Who plushies, or whatever, a Cyberman poster or something, then maybe you could say you're a Doctor Who nerd, right? But Doctor Who is a part of at least the Anglosphere's regular pop culture, that there are millions of people that watched it. Not anymore, of course, because it's become complete garbage, but there were, right? Also, Driving and Dragons is a card nerd. There isn't really such a thing as a card nerd, right? If you go around, fixing a car and changing oil and tires and shit like that, you're not a nerd. That's just that automatically saves you from a whole bunch of sins, right? So it's if anything, it's an anti. It's like saying, oh well, this guy's a football player, so he must be a nerd. No, it's the opposite, right? So the question is, how much of a nerd are you? Of all the things I mentioned as being nerdy, is there any of those that you don't do?
So I'm probably going to win the other side of this. So I'm a HEMA fencer. I'm also, I paint miniatures. I also play a lot of war games, including Stratego Sin and Chainmail. I used to be in a book club. So I do a lot of reading. And I was a weird film student media guy. So granted, it was a technical school, so I don't have to say I'm from a weird film school. But yeah, I'm quite nerdy. I'm all into 1950s movies. I was really into Doctor Who, David Tennant fan. So my dad's gonna probably make a comment saying Tom Baker is better, but
Well, I liked every single one of them, from Hartnell to Capaldi. Absolutely, all of those guys were great.
I haven't seen Capaldi or anything after, so it might be good. But I'm quite nerdy. So Always have been. I used to
Right.
play a
Are
lot
you-
more video games than I do now, but
Do you collect like fandom toys? Do you have Funko Pops,
no,
things like that?
I never got into that. I collect a lot of
That
books though.
that that at least saves you a little bit of face there, right? Like, because there's that, and then the last one would be like if you were a brony, right? Then you're that would be it.
Yeah, but my only thing close is just I have a 3D printer, so now I've opened myself up to the world of printing any miniature for our game that we wanted. So now I've got way too many. And it's funny because we only use half of them, and then when we war game, we just use painted blocks anyway, because it takes way too long to put them all out and paint every single guy. But yeah, quite nerdy. But no Funko Pops or bronies or
all right. That's
don't have a Doctor Who
good at least. On that sigh of relief, I believe that is the end of the interview. Thank you to everybody who's been watching. Please be sure to share the video after it's done processing, right? And let people take a look at. I think if you haven't looked at Barrows and Borderlands yet, you really should. You're probably going to find it very interesting. If any of what we've talked about tonight sounds appealing to you, I've been very impressed by this game, and let's help get the word out, right? So that it becomes the success that it deserves. And I guess that's everything for this time. The next RPG Pundit encounter will be on the 27th of July. So mark your calendars. I can't say yet who the guest is going to be, mainly because I haven't finished determining who the guest is going to be, but it's going to be someone, and I'm sure it'll be interesting, just like tonight was. Also, you might have the record for the longest live stream. I don't know, 2.5 hours. It's cutting it close. I'm not sure because there were a few that were close to that long.
I'm a night owl, so I'm used to.
Lee was 2 hours and 50 minutes, so he's still got you beat there. And Driving and Dragons was 3 hours. So there you go. Driving and Dragons likes to get prizes on this show. Apparently, he's got the longest one. All right, guys. So we will see you guys in 4 weeks. Meanwhile, be sure to check out my channel, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, check out my videos, and check out all my products. The link is in the description of this or any of my other videos, where you can get all of my different games that some of which I've shown you guys some of today, and pick up Barrows and Borderlands, but be sure to check out my books as well. That's everything for today, and I'm about to start smoking a Lorenzetti poker with Argento roots.
Oh, sounds good.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye.